In video 9, we will examine the changes in the 3-point holistic rubric. You will need your New York State Testing Program rubrics, scoring policies, and practice score sheet. Turn to the page with the Mathematics 3-point holistic rubric. The 3-point rubric applies to all grade 3 through 8 extended response questions. Responses that demonstrate each level of understanding are further defined by the approved guide papers. It is important to understand the differences in the language at each score point of the rubric. The guide papers will show how the student responses are held to the criteria in the rubric. Let's start by looking at the descriptions of a 3-point response. A 3-point response answers the question correctly. This response demonstrates a thorough understanding of the mathematical concepts, but may contain errors that do not detract from the demonstration of understanding. Indicates that the student has completed the task correctly using mathematically sound procedures. What do you notice when you compare the bullets that describe the top score on the 3-point rubric to the top score on the 2-point rubric? Well, it's a bit of a trick question because, as you will see, that they are exactly the same. So when we look at the 3-point rubric and the 2-point rubric, to get the top score, both types of responses require a correct response, and they may contain some errors as long as those errors do not detract from a demonstration of understanding. Like we said with the 2-point rubric, to determine which types of errors are acceptable and which ones would get in the way of the understanding depends somewhat upon the particular task that we are looking at and where the mistakes occur. A 2-point response is partially correct. This response demonstrates partial understanding of the mathematical concepts and/or procedures embodied in the task, addresses most aspects of the task using mathematically sound procedures, may contain an incorrect solution but provides complete procedures, reasoning, and/or explanations, may reflect some misunderstanding of the underlying mathematical concepts and/or procedures. Note the words that set the 2-point score papers apart from a 3 or a 1. You'll see words like partial, most, and some. Recognize that the bullets listed here describe work that represents a partial understanding of the standard being assessed. A paper wouldn't necessarily have to match all of the bullets to be considered a 2. We are looking for where the work best fits into the rubric's descriptions. A 1-point response is incomplete and exhibits many flaws but is not completely incorrect. This response demonstrates only a limited understanding of the mathematical concepts and/or procedures embodied in the task. It may address some elements of the task correctly, but reaches an inadequate solution and/or provides reasoning that is faulty or incomplete. It exhibits multiple flaws related to misunderstanding of important aspects of the task, misuse of mathematical procedures, or faulty mathematical reasoning. Reflects a lack of essential understanding of the underlying mathematical concepts. May contain correct numerical answers, but required work is not provided. A 1-point response is incomplete and exhibits many flaws, but is not completely incorrect. A response that scores a 0 is incorrect, irrelevant, incoherent, or contains a correct response arrived at using an obviously incorrect procedure. Although some parts may contain correct mathematical procedures, holistically, they are not sufficient to demonstrate even a limited understanding of the mathematical concepts embodied in the task. The zeros that are completely incorrect are pretty easy to recognize. We do need to be aware and watching for situations where the student has a correct answer, but it was found using an obviously incorrect procedure. These are times when it's good to have another scorer confirm that the procedure was incorrect and not just an unusual method. There are also times when the student does some correct work, but it isn't enough holistically to demonstrate even a limited understanding. So how do we know if a student has demonstrated a limited understanding of the task? We determine this by examining the 1s and the 0s in the guide papers to see how these scores are illustrated in the student work. This concludes video 9 of the 3-point holistic rubric. You can use videos 10 through 13 to practice scoring with a 3-point holistic rubric.